Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to this episode of the HEADCHECK Health Talks podcast. Today, I'm Eric VanderHelm, sales manager at HEADCHECK Health here, and we have on Kiara Jefferies. She's the president of the North Bay and District Girls Hockey Association. So Kiara, if you want to just start us off here by introducing yourself and a little bit about your background and kind of how you ended up in this position, and then we'll just jump into some questions for about 25 minutes here.
That sounds good. So, hi everyone, I'm Kiara. I'm the president for the North Bay and District Girls Hockey Association. I moved to North Bay in 2017, so had a large hockey background growing up in the North Halton area. Got involved in coaching when I was in grade 9 and had a passion for it, so continued doing that. When I moved to North Bay, just wanted to stay involved in the community and eventually moved my way up to get onto the board. And then a few years ago, I was voted in as our current president of the association. As well, I work in youth soccer as a sports administrator and as an assistant coach of the Nipissing University women's hockey team.
Awesome. So just so we're all clear here, then, your role as the president, is it full-time, part-time, most time? How would you characterize it? Because I know a lot of associations do it differently.
So our board for the Minor Hockey Association on the girls' side in North Bay is full volunteers. So no one's employed by the board per se, but we're all voted in at an annual general meeting, which happens every year. And I'm in my second year of it, my current 2-year term. So my position would be up in the spring to be voted back in, but it's every 2 years, 4 positions are up for election on our board.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I mean that's the most common setup. Awesome. So I mean, it sounds like you're pretty involved in the local sports scene just in general.
Yeah, it's a lot. Soccer at least is my full-time job, but being the president of a board is like a full-time job on top of having a full-time job. So it's definitely not for the faint of heart or people that think it's just, you put your feet up and everything runs smoothly. You're all hands on deck and you're basically being reached out to 24/7. People don't care if it's a holiday, if it's the weekend, and you have to be accessible.
Interesting. So yeah, that brings up one of the questions here, which is about, you mentioned this is like a full-time job on top of your other job. So, I mean, you seem like you're managing that pretty well. What about the other board members, and how do you retain them and get them to keep doing their jobs and to make sure that the association continues to run smoothly?
Yeah, it's definitely not easy, especially as people have kids as they get older. They want to be able to spend that time with them watching their kids play and not having to worry about the extra on the side. Thankfully, right now we have a really good board. Everyone's really involved and willing to help, which makes things a lot easier. But it's not always that way. There's times where, people don't realize how much work it is, and then they get involved and they realize it's not for them. And that's okay too. It's a learning opportunity and just trying to figure things out as you go. I can definitely say when I first started on the board, I had no idea what I was getting myself into and how many hours is really involved. And after sticking with it, you kind of find a groove and things that work and don't work. But at first, it's a lot of learning.
Are there other volunteers aside from the board that are contributing in a meaningful way?
So all of our coaches and team staff are volunteers. So that can be tricky at times too. But this year's been a really good year. We've had coaches that are knowledgeable step forward, and we're in a good place right now, which makes it a lot easier on us as a volunteer board when you have people that are knowledgeable and care for the kids, especially in a minor association when, safety is a big part of that and you're trusting people to volunteer and take care of other kids that are within the same age group as their child too.
Yeah. So you mentioned not really knowing what you were getting yourself into. Could you tell us a bit about, what were your expectations coming in, thinking of like what types of tasks that you would be doing versus what actually ended up happening?
So when I first came into the board, I started as a director, so I was the director of marketing. So that wasn't too much work, posting pictures on social media when teams send them in, making graphics for special events, like little things on the side. And then my first full position on the board was the vice president. And as the vice president, you're on every committee. Like you don't realize when you get into it, like you're on the discipline committee, you're on the appeal committee, you're part of all those aspects of behind the scenes, coaching selection, tournament committees. every little aspect that isn't really thought about. So it's just a lot of added time that you don't think about, like coaching selection. You want to pick the right people for the job, and if you don't know them well enough, it's interviewing them, understanding how they run a practice, what their expectations are for the season, and how they're gonna coach young kids and
Mhm.
foster them into the leaders of tomorrow.
So would you say that you ended up sitting in more meetings than you thought? Like, what I guess
Yeah,
a follow-up
definitely.
question would be, what takes up the most time as a president?
Well, in the president role, definitely like making sure everyone is doing their role. So we have an ice scheduler, so making
Yeah.
sure refs and timekeepers and all the ice is in line. Teams have that on their end of the schedule. Then we have our rep convener, so he would oversee all of our travel teams. So just making sure that if a parent complaint comes through, he's the first person that takes that complaint and looks at it, and then goes to our um, complaints committee essentially, which is our house league convener, rep convener, and our vice president, and then making sure everyone's kept in the loop. And then you have your house league convener looking after your house league teams, your vice president who's chairing all of these boards, all of these committees. Sorry. So like making sure everyone's doing their role, but also trusting that they're going to get it done. That can be a hard part too, because making sure things get done and not wanting to overstep, that can be a challenge at times.
Yeah, something that just kind of comes up for me is I've certainly done my fair share of volunteering, but I've never volunteered on on the board of a sports organization where there are things happening, weekly, if not daily. And I'm thinking about, because I'm the president of like the Moonstone Parks and Recreation
Mhm.
Committee, and we run one event per month, and it's like quite a bit of work just to run the committee and fill in for people when people are absent or can't do something. But I imagine, like you said, yeah, people would be there's games happening multiple times per week, and so there's always something. And because you're the president, I mean, I feel like I understand that um, dynamic where you have to fill those gaps, and so that does seem like
Yeah.
probably when I think about what takes up the majority of your time, it's like kind of hard to explain because it's just whatever ends up coming up, and there's
And
things all
it
the time.
it could be anything. Like it could be as simple as
Ref didn't show
someone
up.
needs a jersey, a ref didn't show up, and like those aren't always easy things to figure out. Like we only have like our U9 House League program is sponsored by Tim Hortons. Well, they get 16 jerseys at the start of the year. So if a kid loses a jersey and they have 14 players on that team and they have a pickup player for a game, they might not have a jersey for that kid that's forgot their jersey at home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Little things people don't think about, right? A missing sock halfway through the year,
Hmm.
ordering apparel in time for the season or equipment, right? Like those are things that for our rep teams, jerseys take 6+ weeks to come in.
Hmm. Yeah, and I've seen some organizations like try to solve that problem proactively. Like, okay, next year we're ordering a couple extra jerseys and
Yeah,
or whatever. And
yeah.
so things.
And you try, but then you're guessing like you look at the U13 age group and you have a kid that's 4'5" and a kid that's 5'6",
Yeah.
and you can't have every size available, right? So you have a kid swimming in a jersey that's down to their knees. Is that really safe?
Hmm. Yeah. So
So
on that note, I guess what would you say is a good middle ground or strategy for balancing that need of putting out the immediate fires that are happening and trying to, I guess, long term plan so that those fires maybe don't happen as much in the future?
yeah, I think the biggest thing is delegating where you can. Like
Yeah.
if I'm not able to delegate to my rep convener, or my vice president, or my house league convener, or my registrar, and I try to do everything myself, it's not going to get done. Like there's just not enough hours in the day, and it's not possible. So that's a big thing I've learned. Like I can't take on everything all at once. I need to find people that I trust and are able to share the load. Having people that you trust beside you makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, and I guess of course they need to trust you as well. So what tips would you give for, how to build and maintain those relationships with the teams and the volunteers and the people that are out there doing their best?
I think the biggest thing is open communication, like just being willing if someone has a question to sit down and have that conversation with them and making yourself visible at the rinks. Like I can't just sit here behind my computer and do everything. Like I have to be willing, on an off night when I don't have anything going on to go sit at the rink for a couple of hours and make sure I see the teams play. every once in a while and building those relationships with not just the coaches, but the parents who are members of our association as well.
Yeah. I feel like it's easy to start to think differently about somebody when you haven't seen them in a while. So that's something that it's interesting you
Yeah.
bring up, like actually showing up in person.
Like if I just sat here and answered emails, people would have no idea who I was. And then I go to the rink, and what's the point of being there if they don't want to have those conversations or share their ideas? Because sometimes they do have good suggestions,
Yeah.
but without having those conversations, you're never going to hear them and you're never going to be able to bring them forward.
Mm-hmm. Is there any time? So I remember I had a conversation recently with Mark Franche from the Eastern Ontario Junior Hockey League, and he's the commissioner there. And I asked kind of maybe a silly question about, a time when he had to sort of come down on people with a decision, and he kind of flipped the script on me. It was like, no, that never happens, right? Because he doesn't actually even get a vote because he's the commissioner. And I'm like, yeah, I should have known that. Like, I don't get a vote either as the president of the association that I work with. And so he told me that his job is mostly consensus building. And the tough thing is that sometimes when you build that consensus and then you end up implementing a rule, then you go to enforce it later and then people complain about it. Have you noticed any of that sort of dynamic at all?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. Like again, I don't get a vote either because I am the chair of our board. Unless there's a tie, of course, then I'm the tie-breaking vote. So it is an interesting dynamic, like sitting in meetings and you're sharing your opinion. But my opinion, I can share my opinion all I want, but it's trying not to influence like a yes or no and sway people your way because you're trying to just give the facts. And I found that to be pretty difficult at times. Thankfully, it's been a pretty good few years where we haven't had to make too many big decisions while I've been in this position. But definitely, like once a decision's made, you have to be on that side whether you agree with it or you don't agree with it.
Yeah.
And if I say the opposite and then it goes out to someone and one of our members, well, they're like, well, our president doesn't agree with it, so why is this happening? So even if you don't agree with something, you have to find a way to make sure the message gets out like you're in line with it, even though you may not be.
Yeah, I think I was almost like implicitly aware of this when I came in, even though it's my first time ever being a president, sort of like, okay, I knew I didn't have a vote. And so I remember there was a decision that was getting made. And I tried very difficult. I tried very hard not to, like, you don't want to put all your cards out on the table. Because like you said, if everyone knows that you're super against something and then it ends up getting voted in anyway, then you can end up with some problems because people are making those. Yeah, they have that thought. So I've had even times where I got the sense that people felt like I should have supported them more, and it's like you got to understand that I have to be impartial here. Like I have to. I'm sure you
And it's
feel.
hard. It's hard at times because sometimes there are things that you really don't agree with and they're really out to left field, but you have to find that middle ground and you have to find something between yes and no and how you're going to support both sides of it because you're going to have board members who could potentially vote no and some that vote yes, and you have to be able to support both of them after the final decision has been made.
Mm-hmm. When this is a weird question, but just out of curiosity, when you're voting, is it out in the open? Like, do you know who voted yes and who voted no?
On our board, yeah, we do it that way, but at our AGM, we do everything by ballot for the most part. Like as long as a member puts a motion forward that they want it to be by private ballot, then we have to do it by private ballot at our AGM. But our board's pretty small. Like there's 8 people total, so it's not a huge board, and most of the time the decisions tend to be pretty unanimous.
Usually
Like
unanimous, yeah.
and like just based on conversation at the table, you kind of know where everyone's lying.
Right. Yeah, and ultimately as a president, you're trying to do what's best for the organization, and so that's why you're trying to build that consensus. And
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like a lot of people don't realize that, right? Like they might think that the decision you're making, maybe it's a player movement decision and you're deciding not to move a player up an age group, and they might think it's the worst thing in the world because their kid can't move up an age group a year early, but they don't realize how much that may impact that age group below or above by taking a spot away from a kid.
yeah, certainly a lot of things to balance. Yeah, speaking of, doing what's best for the organization, I want to talk a little bit about the culture of player safety at North Bay District Girls Hockey Association. So I know like you started your presidency last year and pretty quickly on you decided to implement head checks. So that was interesting. But yeah, the first question I have here would be, beyond mandatory helmets or mouth guards or whatever and rules, what's what's a thing that you would say makes the biggest difference, the biggest tangible difference in player safety?
Coaches and trainers that care, like that actually care about a player's safety. You know, they're not going out there and telling kids, "Oh, it's okay, just shake it off and get back on the ice." Like if kids see that, they're going to think anytime they're hurt that they can just keep going out there and playing. So having trainers and coaches who actually intervene and care that an athlete, you know, is getting the proper care and treatments that they need should they be injured before they come back, but also having that safe environment where they feel supported and not afraid to tell their coach if something happens. I think that's been the biggest thing. And with the implementation of HeadCheck, it's been good for us as a board because we can actually see and track that things are happening. We have people come back to us and say, you know, I need to submit an insurance form. Well, now we can get that for them. Whereas before, tracking all those forms and making sure that it was filled out, we had no way of doing that.
Kind of had to make it up later. Usually what I
Well,
hear.
or hope that the trainer actually took the time to fill out the form that was provided, which now with they have no excuse now. It's accessible, it's on their phone. They all have their phones with them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've heard that sometimes with the younger kids, they're maybe a little bit more prone to being scared if they even like kind of like no matter what happens, if they fall down, they're like they don't get back up kind of thing.
Mhm.
I don't know if you've seen that, but I've heard that from some people where you got to find that balance between like, okay, you are actually fine and you can go back out there just because you fell over. It doesn't mean that you're injured and you have to stop the play and stuff like that. But then you have this other side of it where I think as soon as I don't remember when it was for me, but like as soon as I turned like 10, 12, I just thought I was invincible.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's, I think, the age group that I would be the most concerned about. Oh,
Yeah,
like preteen and teenager kind of
and
age.
I think the younger age group's hard too because they don't necessarily know how to advocate for themselves. Like,
They don't know how
you're
to do
you
very much at all. Yeah.
yeah. Like, you like, I coach the U7 group, and
Yeah.
I do it people are like, "Why do you do it?" I'm like, "Because the kid it's just fun." Like, the kids are there, they don't complain. They don't have a care in the world. Like, they're out there. If they skate in a circle for 12 minutes, they couldn't care less.
Yeah.
But those players, you know, they fall, they're gonna cry. Like, they're
Yeah.
5, 6, 7. Then as you get older, the kids kind of start to understand when they are and aren't hurt. And then you get to that age group, like you mentioned, like it's that U13 age where they think nothing can touch them. And then you also can get to the older ages where you get to U18. Well, it's my last year of hockey. If I go out with an injury and I can't play the rest of the year, what's the point, right? Like, so you have to find that balance between telling the coaches and the trainers, but them also understanding that just because they say something doesn't mean they're necessarily hurt. Like, they need to be maybe checked out, but they might not actually be injured or hurt, but they don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. So last couple of questions here before we kind of wrap up would be, so first of the two questions would be, did you get any advice or did you seek out any advice as you kind of stepped into this role that helped you?
I don't know if I necessarily got any advice going into it, but from growing up back in North Halton, I was fortunate enough the teams that I helped coach had active board members on them or people that were past presidents or past vice presidents. So just being able to, when something didn't go the way I expected it to, reach out to them and lean on them, I felt was really important. Just taking their experience and their advice and being able to, you know, use it to make a foundation to go forward is a big thing. A lot of people, I think, find it hard to ask for help. Like, they're afraid to admit that they need that help. So I think being able to lean on those people that have the experience and maybe they went through a similar situation and they might not be able to tell you all the details that happened, but they can tell you the overall situation that happened and how they went about it. And they don't have to name names. They don't have to tell you when what year it happened, and they can just help you and walk you through a situation that you might be going through.
Interesting. Yeah, this makes me think a little bit about, so one of the things that happened when I started volunteering around the same time you did, I guess, like a year and a half ago, was the entire board had turned over. And this is obviously terrible because coming in, I had no records. Like, it was very difficult for me to understand who are our vendors, where do we get our insurance?
Yep.
I didn't know anything. So we're thinking about like our AGMs coming up, and we're thinking about implementing like a past president role. So basically, if you're a president, you have to agree to like basically pick up the phone if you're called, or answer the emails, to be able to provide context and stuff like that.
Yeah, we have a past, so anyone that's our president, the last one is technically our past president.
Yeah.
But they're not the only one. Like you can reach out to people behind them as well. But since I've taken over the role, one thing I started is we use the Google software. So there's a Google Drive associated with every association email. So I've just started building a database like in the Google Drive, like here's 2024, here's
Yeah.
2025, and then here's just generic documents that everyone should have access to or know what's happened in the past. We've even started tracking, like in the past, if there's been discipline coming into the board. I have no idea what happened 5 years ago.
Mhm.
So we're starting to track those things and have a spot. We also have an action item tracker that we've started. So when something's done, it's green. When it's in progress, we have it in yellow. So we have all different colors in there. And then people who come in can see, okay, these are the things that they've implemented and the things that they've done. But it also allows us to show that to our members at our AGM so they can be like, this is what the board actually does. And they can get a better understanding of what it looks like when we go to the table. Because for them, a lot of them have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, I'm doing something very similar. Okay, last question here would just be, if you could pass the playbook on, or say I'm planning on becoming, or I was just voted in as the president of a minor hockey association for next year, what's the biggest piece of advice that you give to me?
I think the biggest piece of advice that I would share is to just get to know your members, like get to know what they want and what their expectations are for the association, and then take those and put them forward. Till you talk to your members, till you really know what they want to see in the association, you can't make any changes. And that's one thing I've really noticed with our house league program over the last few years. It in the past has kind of got a little bit left behind, and the house league parents they were coming forward at full tilt and wanted some change. So just being able to step back and say, what can we do differently than what's been done in the past? But what can we keep the same as well? Because not everything needs to change, and change can be hard as well.
Yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, I guess.
Yeah.
Is there anything else, Kiara? Thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else that you wanna talk about that you feel like you wanted to say, but I didn't ask you about before we wrap up?
I don't think so. I think this was great.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks so much for your time, Kiara, and thanks to everyone for tuning in.
Thank you.